I actually like an oil painting or something. I actually like the texture of the material, and I don't really like it when people get too smooth.
Oh no, who's gonna tell him? So Wallace and Gromit just arrived on UHD Blu-ray, and when the pre-order came up, I was pretty hyped. Now that I have it in my hands, I'm just disappointed. For starters, they're all upscales, despite the first 3 shorts being finished on 35mm film, and the final short, A Matter of Loaf and Death, is a botched AI mess. A Grande Out is the only short without any major video or audio issues on the new 4K disc. The UK package includes a new UHD Blu-ray of the 4 half-hour shorts, a copy of the Complete Collection Standard Blu-ray from 2009, complete with a playable demo of the Telltale game, and a new bonus disc with a couple of archival extras. For anyone who's pre-ordered the American set, I should point out that the metadata on the disc and the label on the menus make it pretty obvious that this is effectively going to be the same disc that will shortly be coming out from Shout Studios in North America. But the 2 standard Blu-rays are clearly going to be very different between regions. For one thing, our copy in the UK doesn't have the Were-Rabbit feature film on it. Now, I know that it's common for 4K releases to be upscaled, but there are 2 reasons why it's hard to defend for this release. Firstly, most upscales come from projects that were only finished on 2K video to begin with, like A Matter of Loaf and Death probably was.
And all that flour dust was added.
Yeah, there's so many CG effects, like flour dust especially, compared with The Wrong Trousers where there were 7 effects shots. There's almost every shot had a flour dust effect in it.
They rescanned the film for shorts 1 to 3 in HD back in 2009, and there's no clear reason why they couldn't have rescanned the same film in 4K here in 2024. But secondly, it's pretty much standard for 4K releases to be graded in HDR. HDR is considered a standard feature for 4K discs, and a lot of home cinema fans will swear that HDR makes much more of an impact than resolution does. But Wallace and Gromit isn't even in HDR, despite what the cover implies. UHD discs do have better encoding, but standard Blu-ray encoding still holds up very well on 4K TVs to begin with. Without a native resolution boost, or HDR, there's no real benefit to be gained other than correcting mistakes from older releases. And what they've tried to fix wasn't broken. These comparisons will be zoomed in and slowed down in places to combat YouTube's heavy compression, but more accurate screenshots will be provided in the video description. Just to start with the first 3 shorts, they're a little darker, and I personally find that an improvement over the relatively washed out Blu-ray. I mean, the overall colours are basically the same, but it's something. They've also clearly had a sharpening filter applied, and I have to say they must have been careful about how they applied it, because I never spotted any haloing outside of the pillar boxes on the side of the frame. Unfortunately, this has also exaggerated the pixelization, which already affected the Blu-ray. I'm not sure why it's pixelated like this when it was obviously an HD film scan, but it's been there since 2009 and it's much more obvious in 4K. It's the same story with this chromatic aberration that particularly affects The Wrong Trousers, but can also be seen in a close shave to a lesser degree. I'm not sure if this was caused by the original photography or something in the pipeline during the HD remaster, but it's there. The only real inconsistency between the first 3 is how much noise reduction has been applied to each short. If I didn't know any better, I wouldn't have said that A Grande Out was denoised at all. In fact, I'd call it the only one that looks better on UHD than on Blu-ray. It's subtle, but you can see more texture on, say, these magazines. The grain itself also looks more natural and well resolved in UHD, although more observant viewers than me have found evidence that it's in fact been degrained and regrained. Even so, if we compare the 2 closely, I think that the encoding on the Blu-ray blurs detail into the grain, whereas those details survived the UHD encoding. Maybe they did remove detail when they applied noise reduction to this short in the first place, but from what I can see, we still ended up with a more detailed picture in the final product. Technically. I mean, it's not night and day. The Wrong Trousers has had all of its grain completely removed, and on a technical level, I'm actually impressed that they managed to do that without more obvious detail loss. But make no mistake, detail has been lost. It's reasonably subtle, but noticeable enough to look uncanny to me. Part of the look of these films is the small shifts between frames, the fingerprints, smudges, the imperfections that remind you that these puppets physically exist and that they were animated by hand. Removing any of that texture just completely defeats the point of clay animation to me. There are also some just plain mistakes that the filters made, so these signs clearly have some weird AI sharpening thing going on that just looks a bit unnatural. And in this shot, Wallace leaves a blurry smear on the wallpaper as he walks past, which is a classic noise reduction artifact. A close shave is less filtered, but essentially has all of the same problems as the Wrong Trousers does. Like, look at how some of the texture on Wallace's face has been erased, but the horizontal lines that are still there look way deeper than they should. Admittedly, it's subtle. If you hate the sight of film grain, then you might prefer these two on UHD, but they're an undeniable downgrade if you ask me. For a 4K exclusive release, it just seems like a strange choice in my opinion. And then there's a matter of loaf and death, which had no real room for improvement. I guess that's why they put it in an AI upscaler and turned every dial up to 100? I mean, this is from the opening few seconds of the film, and do I even need to explain what's wrong here? The UHD disc has been so scrubbed of detail that you can't even tell that his apron's made of actual fabric. For that matter, Wallace's vest, which is plasticine, looks more like it's made of solid plastic. To me, the title card makes it undeniable that this was a fully automated job. It's been completely degrained, but it's a digital production. Didn't have grain unless they added it deliberately. So in trying to clean up the picture, not only is the stylistic film grain from the text gone, but so's the flower of dust that's actually in the scene. You know, the physical prop. There's blurring detail, and then there's the clean-up this AI's doing. It's basically replacing 3D objects with completely solid colours. And that's when it's removing detail. When it tries to add detail, the shifting smudges on the plasticine turn into random veins that stick to the characters. And sometimes it'll just draw abstract 2D shapes over everything. They've just taken the video and mangled it. And for those of you in North America, the Shout set advertises a new standard Blu-ray with restored picture. So you might even be getting this AI upscale scaled back down to 1080p on your new remastered Blu-ray disc. The UHD disc also advertises restored audio, but that's nothing special either. And no, it doesn't mean that any of the original music's back. Since the early 2000s, 3 pieces of pre-existing music from The Wrong Trousers have been replaced, presumably for licensing reasons. The affected tracks being Gromit's birthday card, the organ music that the Penguin listens to on the radio, and the music that Gromit's listening to when he's eating breakfast. Personally, I think the organ music is the biggest loss, as we also miss Wallace humming it the next morning. In the previous scene, the music had kept Gromit up all night, so this little moment really twists the knife emotionally. Now, it's entirely possible that Aardman couldn't get the organ music licensed again, but there's one piece they definitely could have restored in some capacity. Happy Birthday to You entered the public domain almost 8 years ago, and the fact that it's still replaced says to me that they never even looked into restoring the original music cues. In this case, restored audio seems to mean the 2009 remixes, but with pitch correction this time.
Film is basically made up of lots of pictures, which we call frames. And when you watch a film, you see 25 of these pictures per second.
All 4 of these films were originally shot at 25 frames per second, to match the 50Hz PAL video standard we use in the UK. But that format isn't always supported by equipment made in regions which use the NTSC TV system, like North America for example. When the first 3 Wallace and Gromit shorts were remastered in HD, Aardman converted them to the cinema standard of 24 frames per second, and they consequently played 4% slower than they should have on the 2009 Blu-ray. If you are familiar with the original versions, you could tell the difference because the whole soundtrack had a lower pitch than normal. A Matter of Loaf and Death wasn't affected because it already had an HD master at the original speed. Controversial opinion, but I don't think the lower pitch was the deal breaker that some people made it out to be. I mean, we don't pitch correct cinema films when they're sped up in the conversion to PAL. Pitch correction isn't a lossless process, it usually distorts the audio in my experience. Nonetheless, pitch correction was demanded, and Aardman or Shout or whoever have complied. But pitch correction doesn't normally mess with the audio in the way that it's done here. Each short has a 5.1 and a stereo track. Both seem to be based on the 2009 remix that appeared on the Blu-ray. Neither disc includes the original mixes of the first 3 shorts, and that's a shame because there are some differences between them, like the timing of certain cues and the overall volume of the dialogue. On the new disc, a close shave sounds fine.
Thanks, Pooch. Give me a shout if he goes wrong again.
You're very kind.
Oh, won't you come in? We were just about to have some cheese. Thanks, Pooch. Give me a shout if he goes wrong again.
You're very kind.
Oh, won't you come in? We were just about to have some cheese. Thanks, Pooch. Give me a shout if he goes wrong again.
You're very kind.
Oh, won't you come in? We were just about to have some cheese.
As does A Grande Out, if you ignore the fact that the dialogue has been pitch corrected and the music hasn't. I think that's what's going on here.
No crackers, Gromit. We've forgotten the crackers. No crackers, Gromit. We've forgotten the crackers. No crackers, Gromit. We've forgotten the crackers.
But the dialogue in The Wrong Trousers sounds completely garbled.
It's the wrong trousers, Gromit, and they've gone wrong. Stop them, Gromit, stop them! Help me, Gromit, the trousers have gone haywire. Get me out! Help! It's the wrong trousers, Gromit, and they've gone wrong. Stop them, Gromit, stop them! Help me, Gromit, the trousers have gone haywire. Get me out! Help! It's the wrong trousers, Gromit, and they've gone wrong. Stop them, Gromit, stop them! Help me, Gromit, the trousers have gone haywire. Get me out! Help!
Although it's subtle, something weird's going on in A Matter of Loaf and Death as well. And remember, this short never had audio issues in the UK releases, because it was encoded at the original 25 frames per second. So for us, they've created a new problem and then sort of fixed it, but not fully fixed it at the same time.
Don't fret, madam. Tea cakes, lad. The wholemeal fruit on me knees. Don't fret, madam. Tea cakes, lad. The wholemeal fruit on me knees.
The stereo tracks are a bit off as well, but I can't quite put my finger on what's wrong.
There. Nothing to fret over. Just a quick shampoo. We tested this on Gromit. Haven't we, lad?
Whatever it is, I can't imagine anyone thinking that this is a good compromise for having the pitch corrected. At least the new bonus disc is worthwhile. It contains the Cracking Contraptions shorts from 2002 and the BBC documentary A Grand Night In, The Story of Aardman from 2015. Admittedly, both are on Aardman's YouTube channel, but they're both a must-watch for any Wallace and Gromit fan, and it's great to have a permanent copy of them in higher quality. But even that comes with a caveat. The cracking contraptions are upscaled from standard definition and look noticeably worse than they did on their original DVD. The original DVD was mail order though, so I guess this is the best retail version of the cracking contraptions. Fortunately, BBC Studios also released a standard Blu-ray with the new bonus disc, so at least that's an option. The main disc is region free, but the new bonus disc is region locked. And as for that American set, well, people were calling that thing a rip-off when we thought it would actually be in 4K. At least in the UK, the perfectly serviceable disc from 2009 has been reprinted. Their equivalent went out of print a long time ago, and Shout's standard edition is both missing extras and affected by audio issues just like the ones on the new 4K disc. And as disappointed as I am, I'm also just confused. Were the 4K masters some kind of legal obligation? Did Aardman think this was good enough? Why are the first three relatively accurate to the original look when the last one's full of AI nonsense? Were they actually planning to rescan the others when they threw that one together? It just seems out of character as much as anything. The HD masters were really impressive for the time they came out, and they'd clearly put the effort in back then. If this doesn't make the sales that they were hoping for, I hope that BBC Studios and Shout and Aardman take the right lessons away from it. In conclusion, you shouldn't buy the 4K version of Wallace and Gromit. But you should buy the 4K version of Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon, because that looks really good. And I feel a bit better ending on a positive note.